3 hours into the night shift, Palisade Relay Station felt tighter than its metal ribs. The corridor lights dimmed to save heat, and every dimming made the air sound drier in Mara Keene's mask. The station fans pushed recycled air with a steady hiss that made silence feel engineered. Mara ran the Interline Postal Service counter on the archive ring. People brought voice letters like rations. Small, counted, and never guaranteed. Her work was ritual. Verify the sender tag. Confirm the route. Press the time seal stamp. Drop the capsule into the buffer vault to wait for a transmit window. Transmit windows were not generous. They opened when corridor noise dipped and the array could push a clean burst through the Gannett corridor. In wartime, windows shrank, jittered, and vanished. A message could arrive late enough to feel like a lie, even when every word was true. The quiet queue was short tonight, which bothered her. Short lines meant people had stopped recording, or stopped believing the station would ever deliver. Toma Reyes slid a scuffed capsule across the counter. To my sister, he said, Larkhaven Habitat, same as always. Mara held it under the reader. The capsule chirped, then stalled. Hold still, Mara said, it is lagging. The route string looked normal. Palisade Relay Station, Gannett Corridor, Larkhaven Habitat. The timestamp did not. It claimed the capsule had entered Palisade intake 47 days ago. Mara refreshed the screen. The number stayed. Toma's voice tightened. That is wrong. It is, Mara said. She flipped the capsule. The interline seal was genuine, but the time impression looked pressed twice. She opened the chain receipt ledger and searched the capsule hash. A matching entry appeared, dated 47 days prior, signed by a different clerk. The ledger also showed a clearance code, the kind that should have pushed the capsule into the outbound queue. Yet it had somehow returned to her counter as if the station itself had changed its mind. Mara kept her face still. Did you hand this to anyone before tonight? No, Toma said. I record it. I bring it here. I know the rules. Rules kept people alive. Rules also created places for other hands to hide. Mara scanned again, slower, and pulled the deeper route metadata. Under the civilian string sat a faint secondary marker used by Frontier Security Command to tag monitored traffic. Her stomach tightened. That marker meant the capsule had been handled outside postal chain. Someone had looked, stamped, and put it back without leaving the right receipts. Your message is intact, Mara said, but I need a verification check. Toma leaned closer. Just send it. She keeps asking if I am alive. Mara thought of her own unsent capsule, locked away with a name she could not afford to say out loud at work. I can move it through process, she said. I cannot change what the corridor does. Toma's jaw worked. Your process is all we have. Mara filed a verification under a neutral code and pressed the time seal stamp. A fresh imprint, a new ledger line, motion, even if it was imperfect. She slid the capsule into a buffer vault tray and locked the hatch. I will not lose it, she said. Toma nodded, not satisfied but out of options. Do not let them bury it. When he left, Mara watched the door close and listened to the station fans. Then she noticed something small and wrong. The counter camera light was on when it should have been off. Someone was watching the watchers. 2 hours later, the clerks were pulled into the night window room. Status panels for the window transmit array glowed across one wall. A calm light over a nervous crowd. Nia Vance stood beside Mara, chin high. A small Relay Workers Guild pin sat on Nia's collar. More symbol than shield. Dax Hollis, the bandwidth tech, lingered near the doorway like he had been dragged in as a warning. Dr. Corvin Sloan entered without hurry. Gray collar crisp, hands empty. He did not need a tablet. He owned the policy. Effective immediately, Sloan said. All civilian relay content is subject to mood risk screening. No one spoke. Everyone understood the polite phrase. We have confirmed that uncontrolled messaging contributes to panic, desertion, and sabotage. Sloan continued. We will not allow recordings to compromise station stability. A thin screen lit up with a title. Black index list. It included battle terms, but also ordinary words that could turn a hallway into a stampede. This is not cruelty, Sloan said. It is triage. You do not hand a shaken station a match and call it honesty. You will apply the criteria. He added. Restricted content is held. If it escalates risk, it is removed. Deviations are reported. Nia's voice stayed steady. Interline postal service policy requires delivery or return within a fixed holding period. Sloane looked at her, steady and cold. Interline policy is subordinate to emergency order. We are here to preserve function. He added a second rule without pause. Recipient trace verification begins tonight. Every delivery must tie to a physical identity token. No exceptions. Borrowed tokens become contraband. Mara felt heat rise under her collar. Shared tokens were how families survived. Elders relied on relatives to carry tokens for them. Couples swapped tokens to split ration errands. Under this rule, survival would look like fraud. A compliance pad passed down the line. The bond text was short and brutal. Loss of access, confinement, and criminal referral for repeated violations. Thumbprint after thumbprint. Mara pressed hers and felt a quiet shame settle behind her teeth. Then came training examples. A mother begging for medicine. Flagged for shortage language. A spouse describing a bombing. Flagged for graphic distress. A mechanic warning about oxygen cuts. Flagged for infrastructure alarm. Each example carried the same message. Grief was now a security incident. Nia leaned toward Mara, barely moving her lips. They will widen it weekly, she whispered, until nothing human fits through. Mara whispered back, almost without sound. How do we work like this? Nia's eyes flicked toward the ceiling camera. We work, she said, or we disappear. When the briefing ended, Mara returned to her counter. The quiet queue had grown again. People clutching capsules like the station was the last place that still listened. A capsule sat in Mara's tray already flagged. She had not scanned it. The system had. Recipient is Elias Ward. Route is Kestrel Front. Mood risk is high. Warning. Do not deliver. Mara did not play it. She could not afford to hear his voice and still pretend she was only doing a job. She slid the capsule into her drawer, below the trays, where the camera angle fell short. Outside the postal corridor, boots began to march in a pattern that did not belong to station work. An hour passed, then another, and the station felt like it was holding its breath. Near the end of the shift, the transmit schedule flickered, corridor noise spiked, then dropped, as if something far away had turned a knob. The status panel showed a possible window forming, thin and unstable, a chance that could close without warning. Mara was alone at the counter when Dax Hollis appeared, coffee pouch taped to his sleeve. Your vault is weird tonight, he said. It is always weird, Mara said. Not like this, Dax said. You are getting ghost headers. The system is accepting files that never touched intake. One new file had appeared in the buffer vault index. No sender, no chain receipt, yet the time seal stamp field showed a perfect imprint, down to the micro ridges. That should not exist. The stamp was physical. It required a hand. It required a clerk. Dax's voice hardened. Do not touch it. If it is a trace trap, they will map your account. They will map mine. They will map anyone who stands too close. If I do not touch it, it still sits in my vault, Mara said, and people keep trusting the counter. Then let it sit, Dax said. Let the Bureau own their own poison. Mara stared at the file header. It was blank in the places that mattered and perfect in the places that should have been messy. That kind of perfection was a fingerprint. I need to know what it is, she said. Dax exhaled and pulled a small offline playback unit from his kit. Older than station policy and therefore useful. No uplink, no logging, just sound. Air gap only, he said. One-way transfer. Mara moved the file one way and pressed play. A man's voice filled the space, calm and tight with recycled air. If you can hear this, the Larkhaven oxygen ration schedule is wrong. They are shifting supply through the quarantine gallery. They call it maintenance. It is not. The next cut will hit the nursery ring first. Mara's throat went dry. Do not run to the docks. The voice continued. The docks are watched. Go to the archive ring service hatch. There is a manual bypass in the ledger maps. Someone at Palisade will understand. Do not trust the bulletin board. The recording ended with a soft click. It sounds like a warning, Mara said, and hated how much she wanted it to be true. It sounds like bait, Dax said. Clean lines. One hatch. One sweep. Frontier Security Command loves a crowd that assembles itself. Mara saw Toma's scuffed capsule in her mind, with its hidden security marker. She saw the new trace policy. She saw Elias Ward's capsule in her drawer, waiting like a small trapped animal. This place used to move voices, Mara said. Now it moves destinies. Dax's expression tightened. Destinies get people killed, and you and I are not built to be martyrs. The station intercom clicked. Archive Ring Postal Unit, stand by for inspection. Major Brandt Kessler stepped into view with 2 guards. Rifles low, eyes high. Frontier Security Command insignia sat on his chest like a promise. Routine check, Kessler said. No one moves. Show me your last 3 intake logs. And your hold tray. Mara kept her hands visible. Yes, Major. Kessler stepped closer to the counter. Eyes taking inventory. He looked at the trays. The scanner. The ledger screen. The buffer vault hatch. And then at Mara, as if she were another container to open. Dax did not move. His stillness was a confession and a shield. As Mara pulled up the logs, she saw it. The ghost file entry had updated on its own. A chain receipt number had appeared where none existed before, neatly formatted, as if printed by a careful clerk. Someone was writing in her ledger while she watched. Kessler leaned toward the screen, and Mara felt the air tighten around her mask. Outside, the hallway lights dimmed again. Dawn was still hours away, and the station had decided that this night would not end quietly. 3 hours after the inspection began, the archive ring felt smaller than the diagrams promised. Major Brandt Kessler stood at Mara Keen's counter with 2 guards behind him. Boots planted wide as if the floor might shift. The corridor boards had updated once already. Civilian window suspended until further notice. People still queued, but they whispered now, and the whispering made the air feel thinner. Open the buffer vault, Kessler said. Mara keyed the latch. The vault door slid back, exposing trays of voice letter capsules stacked in numbered rows. The storage bay smelled faintly of cold plastic and disinfectant, the scent of things meant to last. People treated those capsules like rations. Measured, hoarded, easy to lose. Kessler lifted one capsule and rolled it between his fingers. Time seal looks fresh, he said. It was stamped tonight, Mara replied. He set it down and pointed at the chain receipt ledger on her screen. Then explain why this capsule shows 2 stamps. Same hash. Mara kept her hands in view. It returned to intake, she said. I filed verification. Postal procedure. Kessler nodded once, then turned his head toward the corridor. Seal the archive ring secondary vault, he ordered. A heavy lock engaged behind the walls. The sound came a moment late, like a distant door closing in a different room. A few people in line flinched anyway. They were learning which noises meant power moving away from them. Dr. Corvin Sloan stepped into the corridor, calm enough to be insulting. His Morale Integrity Bureau badge caught the overhead light, and the badge did what a weapon did without the mess. Major, Sloan said, we will waste less time if we align on purpose. Kessler did not look at him. Purpose is control, he said. We are closing civilian traffic. No more noise through the Gannett corridor. A low chime sounded. The bulletin boards refreshed again, repeating the suspension in larger font. A woman in line clutched her capsule tighter, then turned away without speaking. She did not argue. She moved like someone conserving oxygen. Mara watched her go. The station fans hissed like dry breath. Sloan lowered his voice. Just for Mara. The Bureau requires your cooperation, he said. Provide your restricted list, capsule hashes, sender tags, recipient tags, any anomalies. Mara felt her stomach drop. A list meant names. Names meant doors opening in the night. It also meant guilt applied by spreadsheet. Simple enough to hand to a guard. That is not Interline Postal Service policy, Mara said. Emergency order supersedes it, Sloan replied. You signed the bond. Kessler leaned in, close enough that Mara could smell the polymer of his gloves. If you refuse, he said, you lose access. We pull the logs ourselves. You will not like the version we find. Sloane watched her face as if he was measuring heat. This is not personal, he said. We are removing risk. You are hunting people, Mara said. Sloane's expression barely moved. People are sometimes the risk, he replied. A frightened crowd will tear a station apart faster than enemy fire. A man at the back of the line raised his voice. Too loud. My wife is on Larkhaven, he said. I just need to tell her the power cuts are coming. Kessler's guard stepped forward, hand hovering near his rifle. The man lowered his voice at once. It was not persuasion, it was conditioning. Kessler tapped the counter once. Assign her, he said, frontline related, under direct supervision. A new folder opened on Mara's screen with a red header. Kestrel Front, restricted handling, verified by Frontier Security Command. A second panel appeared beside it, listing mandatory steps in hard language. Preview required, classification required, removal expected. Sloane spoke like a supervisor giving a routine task. Mara Keene will monitor the priority queue, he said. She is efficient, she is stable. Mara heard the trap inside the praise. Stable meant predictable, predictable meant usable. The first capsule in the queue was labeled with a name she had kept out of her mouth all night. Elias Ward. 2 hours later, the postal corridor had gone quiet in a staged way. The quiet queue still existed, but people stood farther apart, eyes flicking toward the guards before stepping forward. Messages were becoming contraband. The air was warmer now, not from comfort, but from bodies packed into a narrow hallway that no longer moved. Kessler stayed near the counter, a wall made of uniform. Sloane drifted in and out as if the corridor belonged to him. Nia Vance passed once, pretending to check a maintenance panel, and left a short note on Mara's screen in a worker chat channel that would delete itself. Do not fight them out loud. Fight them in the ledger. Mara pulled the Elias Ward capsule from her drawer and set it under the reader. The scanner painted her gloves pale blue. A message box flashed. Restricted. Mood risk is high. Action is remove. Kessler pointed at the screen. Play it, he said. Sloane added, soft and certain. Then classify it correctly. Mara pressed play. Elias's voice arrived in her headset as if it had traveled a long way just to whisper. Mara, Elias said, if this gets to you, it means the corridor stayed open long enough. That already feels like luck. He sounded tired, not dramatic. That was what made it dangerous. People did not panic because of screaming. They panicked because of calm truth. We are holding a line that was never meant to be held. He continued, medkits are low, power drops are frequent. We patch our suits with tape and call it discipline. A faint metallic thud came through the recording. Distant and real. I do not want you to picture me as brave, Elias said. I want you to picture me as careful. Careful is how we make it to morning. Mara's eyes stung. She kept her face still. If you get notice that I am missing, he said, do not fight the Bureau. Do not go to the docks. Do not try to buy favors. Keep breathing. Keep your hands steady. Stay alive long enough to choose a better world than this one. His voice softened into something Mara could barely hold. I love you, Elias said, and I am sorry I cannot promise a return. The recording ended with a small click. For a moment, Mara heard the corridor without the headset. A child coughed. A woman murmured a name into her capsule recorder, rehearsing as if the right words could make a window appear. Sloane watched Mara, waiting for the error that would justify punishment. Classify, he said. Mara looked at the Bureau criteria list. Finality language, hopelessness, fatal expectation. The station could label love as sabotage, then claim it was medicine. This will be removed, Kessler said. If I remove it, Mara replied, he dies twice. Kessler's eyes hardened. Morale belongs to the station, he said, not to you. Mara's finger hovered over delete. One command and the anomaly would disappear. The system offered it like mercy. She pictured Elias recording between alarms, choosing calm words so he would not burden her. She pictured those words erased by a stranger who called it stability. She did not delete. Instead, she chose hold for review and selected a neutral code. Verification pending. The interface accepted it, but the chain receipt ledger added a note in bright text. Manual intervention. Sloane's voice went colder. You are creating a trace, he said. I am following process, Mara replied. Process is what we say it is, Sloane said, and we are the ones who speak. Mara slid the capsule back into her drawer and shut it carefully. As if sound alone could betray her, the drawer felt heavier than metal should. Outside, the bulletin board updated again. Unauthorized holds will be audited. The corridor did not erupt. That was the point. Fear made people quiet, and quiet made control easier. Near the end of the shift, the window transmit array posted a narrow chance of opening. A thin window, unstable, the kind that made people rush. Rushes were useful to security. They created mistakes, and mistakes created records. Mara saw Dax Hollis approaching with 2 guards on either side of him. His hands were empty. His face was set in the expression of someone trying not to look afraid. The guards kept him moving at a polite pace, like escorts at a formal event. Kessler gestured toward the counter. Bring him here, he said. Dax stopped beside Mara without meeting her eyes. I was told you needed bandwidth logs, he said. Kessler pointed at the chain receipt ledger. A highlighted line blinked. Mara's hold action on the Elias Ward capsule. Time, identity token, and a mismatch in the expected removal workflow. Explain the deviation, Kessler said to Mara. Verification pending, Mara answered. Possible mislabel. Kessler's gaze shifted to Dax. And who helped you? He asked. No one, Mara said. Sloane arrived again, calm as ever. This is why discretion is dangerous, he said. It creates gaps. Gaps create leaks. Kessler did not argue. He did not need philosophy. He needed compliance. He nodded to the guards. Take Hollis to interview, he said. He maintains the array. He will tell us who is making ghost entries. Dax tensed. I do not make ghost entries, he said. You do not have to, Kessler replied. You only have to know who does. As the guards moved him away, Dax turned his head slightly toward Mara. Do not run, he said. They want you to run. He was gone down the corridor. The door to the interview room did not slam. It sealed with a soft click, which somehow felt worse. Mara kept her hands still, forcing calm into her fingers. The station fans hissed. The lock on the sealed vault held. The bulletin board still screamed suspension. The whole place was a machine that had decided humans were the unstable component. Sloane placed a paper form on the counter. Old style, meant to feel personal. Cooperate, he said. Provide your suspicious list. Confirm restricted content was handled correctly. I can protect you from command consequences. Mara glanced at the form header. Frontier Security Command, not the Morale Integrity Bureau. This was not about one capsule. This was a net. Mara remembered the ghost file that had appeared without a sender, carrying a perfect stamp as if the station itself had written it. She remembered the warning inside it, naming a service hatch and a bypass. Details precise enough to steer a desperate person. If security wanted that message to spread, they would not delete it. They would let it circulate until someone acted on it. Then they would arrest the hands that moved it. Not only clerks and technicians, but the quiet runners in the habitat rings who carried tokens for elders. The dock workers who passed capsules between shifts. The relay workers guild members who still believed the ledger belonged to the public. Sloane did not only want silence. He wanted a map. Sloane continued, voice soft, almost generous. People like you like to think you are saving someone, he said. What you will do instead is start a chain. One clerk, one technician, one frightened family, then a stampede. Kessler called from the corridor entrance. Transmit window in 1 hour, he said. We will use it to flush out the leak. Mara understood. They would announce a window. They would let people bring warnings and last words. They would watch who tried to push forbidden messages through. Then follow the chain from capsule to counter to technician to service hatch. They would not need to guess who cared. Caring would reveal itself. Sloane leaned in, voice low. You can be on the safe side, he said, or you can be part of the problem. Mara felt the line forming in her mind. Simple and cruel. Some people killed with bullets. Some killed by deleting a sentence. She set the form down without signing. I will follow interline procedure, she said. Sloane's eyes narrowed. Procedure will not save you, he replied. Mara turned back to the ledger. The anomaly marker blinked like a tiny alarm. Somewhere in the station, Dax Hollis was being questioned. In 1 hour, a window would open, and Palisade Relay Station would turn grief into evidence. Before dawn, Palisade Relay Station carried bad news the way it carried dust. It slipped into seams, stuck in throats, and made people cough on words they never said out loud. Rumor moved faster than packets. When no voice letters arrived, people filled the gaps with worst-case guesses. A missing husband became a corpse. A delayed son became a deserter. Silence did not stay empty. Mara Keene heard the crowd before she saw it. The archive ring corridor outside the Interline Postal Service counter filled with low voices. Then silence. Then low voices again. No one was screaming. The calm was worse. The bulletin board repeated the same notice in new colors. Civilian traffic suspended. Return later. For stability. People returned anyway. They came with voice letter capsules in both hands. As if plastic could keep a family together. Some had recorded their messages days ago and still carried them like a charm. Waiting for a window that never opened. A woman stepped forward and held her capsule up like a pass. My father is in Larkhaven Habitat, she said. He does not read boards. He waits for my voice. Mara kept her tone even. The corridor is paused. I cannot push civilian packets right now. The woman swallowed. Then confirm you still have it. Confirm you will not erase it. Mara wanted to say yes. She could not under Frontier Security Command seal. Confirmation had become classified. Behind her, a man with 2 children shifted his weight. Eyes fixed on Mara, the older child held the younger by the sleeve, steadying him the way adults used to. My wife is on Kestrel front, the man said. I just need 1 sentence. Alive or not. 1 sentence. Mara felt the weight of that request in her ribs. 1 sentence was the smallest mercy. And that was why it had become dangerous. A guard near the signal quarantine gate cleared his throat. The sound alone made people step back, as if the gate could swallow them. Major Brandt Kessler entered with 2 guards. Rifles stayed low. People still retreated, not because they agreed, but because the station punished bodies before it punished ideas. This is a controlled area, Kessler said. Do not crowd the counter. No one argued. They only looked at Mara as if she could decide what the station had already decided. Mara searched the name the man gave her, then hit the same wall she had hit all night. A red lock icon covered the result. The chain receipt ledger let her see that something existed, then refused to let her show it. Kessler watched her screen. Stop digging, he said. They are not digging, Mara replied. They are waiting. Kessler's jaw tightened. Waiting turns into movement, he said. Movement turns into casualties. A woman near the back slid down to sit on the floor. Her capsule slipping from her fingers. Her companion knelt, whispering fast, trying to keep her alert. Her brother promised he would send a note at shift change. The companion said, It has been weeks. She keeps telling herself you were holding it in the buffer vault. The seated woman gave a small laugh that sounded like a cough. If alive is not a category, she said, then we are already gone. Mara looked at the faces in line. They were not a mob. They were a community running on assumptions because confirmation had been stolen. The station had removed only one thing, and it was enough to poison everything else. She leaned toward the counter microphone. If a transmit window opens, it will be announced, she said. Until then, keep your capsules sealed. Do not chase rumors. Do not go to the docks. She hesitated, then added, Save your air. Save your strength. Kessler's eyes narrowed. The guard by the buffer vault shifted. A quiet threat. Mara did not add anything else. She had said the only honest thing she could, and it did not feel like enough. She returned to her terminal and understood something she had avoided since Sloane's briefing. Holding order by squeezing truth did not preserve a station. It hollowed it out, then painted the hollow clean. An hour later, the window transmit array status changed from gray to amber. The corridor boards flashed a new notice. Transmit window forming, limited capacity, priority traffic only. People leaned closer to the board, then forced themselves to step back when a guard glanced their way. Hope had become something you had to hide. Inside the night window room, Dr. Corvin Sloane stood beside the console like a man posing for a safety poster. He did not speak about fear. He spoke about function. The window will last minutes, Sloane said. We will use it to stabilize the habitat rings. Prepared packets filled the outbound queue, already stamped and signed. Morale bulletins, supply confidence statements, instructions to remain calm. They were crafted to sound personal while saying nothing testable. Nia Vance stood at the edge of the room, hands clasped behind her back. Her face stayed neutral, but her eyes kept cutting toward the timer. Major Kessler placed guards where they could watch hands, not only screens. He watched Mara most of all. Mara's terminal opened with narrow permissions, enough to handle the accepted queue. 10 frontline capsules appeared, all tagged Kestrel Front, all flagged for review. At the bottom sat the one she had tried to keep out of the system. Elias Ward. Sloane stepped closer. Do this correctly, he said. Correctly is safety. Mara nodded once, not agreeing, just absorbing the pressure. She opened a routine maintenance confirmation addressed to Larkhaven Habitat. It was clean language, the kind the Black Index list never bothered with. It was a file the Bureau liked because it sounded like the station speaking to itself, promising that systems were stable and repairs were scheduled. Then she built what she needed inside it. The attachment field on the maintenance file normally carried a short station signature audio, a bland tone that proved authenticity. Mara routed Elias Ward's voice letter into that field, compressing it hard so it could hide inside the same header. To the queue monitor, it would look like one harmless file. To a recipient who opened the capsule properly, it would unfold into a human voice. Her hands stayed steady, but her mouth went dry. Dax Hollis would have done it cleaner, with fewer fingerprints. Dax was not here, and that absence felt like another lock closing. Mara ran the packet through the signal quarantine gate scanner, the same way she would scan any signature field. The scanner returned green because it was checking for prohibited words in the visible header, not for the voice hiding behind it. She applied the time seal stamp and let the system assign a new chain receipt number. The chain receipt ledger wrote the line, then wrote another line beneath it in bright text. Manual intervention. Kessler leaned over her shoulder. What did you change? He asked. A header alignment issue, Mara said, formatting only. Sloane stared at the manual marker, eyes narrowing. He did not need to prove she lied. He only needed time and a record. The window status shifted to green. The array began a low hum that vibrated through the room's thin floor panels. Send the bulletins first, Sloane said. Bureau packets moved out in clean lines, consuming the window. Each file spent bandwidth that would never return. Mara watched the timer drop and felt her pulse speed up with it. When the last morale file cleared, Sloane nodded toward her screen. Now, he said, the acceptable queue. Mara transmitted 2 approved frontline capsules first, the ones that contained nothing but logistics and breathing instructions. She did it because she needed her hands to look normal, and because 2 people might still need those words. Then she selected the maintenance packet and pressed transmit. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the terminal confirmed, queued, validated, dispatched. Dispatch was not delivery. Dispatch was only letting go. The hum faltered as corridor noise rose again. The timer crashed toward 0. The window collapsed back to gray. Mara stared at the confirmation line, feeling no pride. She had just thrown a forbidden sentence into a delayed ocean and called it a chance. She had chosen one true sentence, trading an entire safe life. The first guard moved before Mara could stand. He did not grab her. He placed a hand on the back of her chair, gentle like a practiced technique. Do not move, he said. Major Kessler pulled up the audit view. The manual marker sat there like a flare. He tapped it once, as if touching it could make it confess. Dr. Corvin Sloan approached with controlled disappointment. You could have stayed protected, he said. You chose visibility. Mara forced her breathing slow. I chose a message that was not a slogan, she said. Kessler signaled, and 2 guards brought Dax Hollis into the room. His lip was split. One sleeve hung wrong, as if someone had yanked his arm too hard. His eyes were flat with exhaustion. He looked at Mara once. Quick and sharp. The look said, they wanted this. Kessler spoke to Dax. Confirm how she hid it, he said. Tell us which path she used. Dax swallowed. I do not know, he said. Kessler's voice stayed calm. You maintain the array. You know the paths. I maintain hardware, Dax replied. I do not maintain your net. Sloan turned to Mara. This is not evil, he said. This is survival. A controlled station endures. An uncontrolled station breaks. Mara met his eyes. A silent station is not whole, she said. People are not asking for speeches. They are asking for one honest line. Sloan's tone sharpened. Honest lines trigger panic, he said. Panic kills faster than bullets in a sealed habitat. Mara shook her head. Your bulletins are what create panic, she said. They make people guess. Guessing spreads like a sickness. Kessler cut in. Enough, he said. Revoke access. Detain. A guard clipped Mara's identity token from her belt. Her terminal grayed out at once. The system responded politely, like a service desk denying a request. User privileges revoked. Mara stood without resistance. Resistance would give them a story they could replay for training. Sloan stepped closer, voice lowered, almost kind. Cooperate, he said. Give me the suspicious list. Admit the method. I can keep Hollis out of the detention bay. Mara glanced at Dax. His jaw tightened. He did not beg. He did not look away. That was when Mara understood the final shape of the game. The point was not the packet. The point was the people who knew how to move packets without asking permission. You do not want letters, Mara said to Sloan. You want the human network behind them. Sloan did not deny it. Networks decide outcomes, he said. I am preventing sabotage. You are making couriers by force, Mara replied. You are turning love into contraband and then acting surprised when people hide it. Kessler signaled toward the door. Move, he said. They walked Mara out through the archive ring corridor. The crowd had thinned, but not disappeared. People still hovered near the bulletin board, reading the same lines, looking up at the sealed buffer vault, measuring hope by locks. A woman recognized Mara and took one step forward. Did anything go through? The woman asked. Mara held her gaze. I do not know yet, she said, but I tried to give you truth, not comfort. Kessler pushed her onward. The temporary detention bay waited behind a clean door, close enough to make punishment feel routine. At the threshold, Mara glanced back once. She saw the postal counter in the distance, the time seal stamp under harsh light, and the signal quarantine gate standing like a mouth. She did not know if Elias Ward would ever hear her choice. She did not know if Larkhaven Habitat would open the attachment before security closed the lane. She did not know what Dax Hollis would say when they pressed him again. She only knew the station had trained her to move voices, and she had used that training to move a single truth. Inside the bay, the air was cooler and smelled of disinfectant. A small panel above the door listed rules in calm language, as if calm could replace mercy. Mara heard the distant hum of the transmit array returning to idle. And she wondered where her packet was now. Somewhere between Palisade and Larkhaven. It would wait in a queue, delayed by distance and interference, judged by machines that did not love anyone. Time was the station's oldest weapon, and tonight it belonged to Sloan. The door sealed behind her with a soft click. The detention bay on Palisade Relay Station was designed to feel temporary. Its walls were clean, its air was cool, and its rules were posted in calm language that pretended a person could be corrected like a broken tool. Mara Keene sat on the narrow bench and listened to the station through the door. She heard distant footfalls, then nothing, then a faint hum from the window transmit array returning to idle. Time moved here in small noises. A guard slid a tray through the slot. Water pouch, protein brick, and a folded paper form that looked like a courtesy. The form was a statement of compliance. It asked for one sentence that would close a case. It asked her to admit she had mishandled restricted content and accept removal as necessary for stability. Mara did not sign. She set the form aside and stared at the corner where the wall met the floor. She had spent years learning the invisible structure of the interline postal service. A voice letter capsule was not only a message, it was a chain: intake, stamp, receipt, buffer, transmit, and acknowledgement. Every step left a trace because every step could fail. That was the weakness in Dr. Corvin Sloane's control. He could lock doors and suspend civilian traffic. But he could not run a relay station without receipts. A system without receipts stopped being a system. It became a story, and stories were how stations died. Mara closed her eyes and rebuilt the last few shifts in her mind. The double-stamped capsule, the ghost header that looked too perfect, the manual marker in the chain receipt ledger that had lit like a flare. She could not erase the marker. She did not need to. If she could make the ledger speak in full, it would show who had touched which packet, when they had touched it, and which authority tag had overridden postal chain. It would show Morale Integrity Bureau policy grafted onto Frontier Security Command enforcement. And it would show the station using the postal counter as a net. The slot opened again. This time it was not food. Nia Vance's voice reached her before her face appeared in the narrow window. Guild welfare check, Nia said to the guard. Routine. The guard hesitated, then stepped back half a pace. Nia leaned closer, keeping her hands visible. Mara kept her voice low. They let you in? They let me stand here. Nia replied. They think I will tell you to be quiet. Nia slid a small strip of thermal paper through the slot. It looked like a printer receipt from the station cafeteria, except the header code was interline postal format. Mara unfolded it carefully. Dispatch acknowledgement, received at Larkhaven Habitat Relay Edge. Maintenance packet, integrity confirmed, content opened. Her throat tightened. It was opened. It was opened somewhere, Nia said, not a guarantee, but it did not vanish in the corridor. Mara stared at the line again, as if looking harder could pull the truth out of it. If the packet was opened, someone had heard a voice that was not meant to be heard. Someone had proof that the station was lying. How did you get this? Mara asked. Nia's eyes flicked toward the hallway camera. A clerk saw the print spool. The spool runs when the array caches acknowledgements. It should be sealed. It is not sealed when people are careless. Mara exhaled slowly. Dax Hollis? Nia shook her head once. They are holding him. Interview room. No token access. No sleep. Mara gripped the receipt strip. The paper felt fragile, but it was more solid than any promise Sloane had offered. It was a line that existed outside his screen. Nia leaned closer. Sloane is cleaning paperwork, she said. He wants you to sign. He wants the ledger to show you as a lone problem. Mara met her eyes. He wants the network. Nia's expression did not change. Yes, she said. He wants to flush it out and cut it. Mara looked down at the thermal strip again. A small, ordinary line of text had traveled farther than she had. I used to think this counter moved voices, Mara said. Now I know it moves outcomes. Nia's mouth tightened. Then move an outcome, she said. Mara slid the strip into the seam of her sleeve. I will not fight with fists, she said. I will fight with chain receipts. Nia nodded once. Good, she said. Receipts are harder to shoot. As Nia stepped away, Mara heard the guard's boots shift. The slot closed. Mara sat back on the bench, steadier than she had been since the detention door sealed. She did not need a tunnel. She needed access, even briefly. One shift, one chance to make the record tell the truth. She had no gun. She had files. Sometimes files were all that remained. Dr. Corvin Sloane met her in a small office adjacent to the quarantine gallery. A room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and warm electronics. The decor was practical, but the chair he offered her was softer than the detention bench. And the softness was its own tactic. Major Brandt Kessler stood by the door, arms folded, watching without speaking. His presence made every choice feel physical. Sloane placed the same paper form on the desk. "Sign," he said, "then you return to a quiet life." Mara did not reach for it. "A quiet life in a station full of guesses." She said, "That is not quiet, that is rot." Sloane's eyes narrowed. "You think you are noble," he said. "You are reckless." "I am a clerk," Mara replied. "Reckless is what happens when you cut confirmation from a habitat." Sloane leaned forward. "Reckless is when people panic and run to the docks," he said. "Reckless is when someone spreads a recording that triggers a stampede." Mara held his gaze. "You are the one creating stampedes," she said. "You do it by starving people of one honest line." Kessler shifted his weight, a warning that the argument had a limit. Sloane spoke softer, as if lowering volume could turn force into reason. "I am holding up a column," he said. "This station is a column. The war corridor is a column. If columns fail, everyone falls." Mara glanced at the form again. The sentence was short. It would fit neatly into his file. "You want me to sign that removal was correct," Mara said. "You want a clean chain." "Yes," Sloane replied, "because the system must remain trusted. Trust is stability." Mara almost laughed. "Trust is earned," she said. "Your bulletins do not earn it." Sloane tapped the desk once. "You are not here to debate philosophy," he said. "You are here because you created a manual marker in the chain receipt ledger. That marker is a liability." Mara nodded slowly. "It is," she said. "It is also evidence." Sloane's face tightened. "Evidence of your misconduct." Mara shifted her hands on her lap. "Calm by choice. You are blending bureau criteria into postal chain," she said. "Evidence that Frontier Security Command is using the postal counter to map people." Kessler's eyes flicked to Sloane, then back to Mara, as if weighing which version of truth was more dangerous. Sloane's voice cooled. "You do not have that evidence," he said. "Not in a form that matters." Mara leaned forward an inch. "Give me limited access," she said. "One supervised shift, with a token that allows ledger reconciliation." Sloane blinked, surprised despite himself. "Why would I do that?" "Because your ledger is messy now," Mara said. "Manual markers are stacking. Ghost headers are appearing. Your own operation is leaving fingerprints. You want it clean." Sloane watched her, calculating. "You want to tamper." "I want to reconcile," Mara said. "A reconciled ledger supports your claim that the system is functioning. It reduces panic. It reduces your workload. It gives you a report you can show command." Kessler spoke for the first time. "You are asking for access after you abused access," he said. Mara turned toward him. "I am asking for monitored access," she said. "You can stand beside me. You can watch my hands. But if your goal is stability, you need the ledger coherent." Sloane's lips pressed together. He wanted to refuse. He also wanted the station to look controlled on paper. "If you sign," Sloane said, "I will authorize limited access during a single maintenance shift. Under Kessler's supervision, you will reconcile the chain receipt anomalies." "And Dax Hollis?" Mara asked. Sloane did not answer directly. "He will remain in custody until we understand his role," he said. Mara felt anger rise, then forced it back down. Anger was loud. Files were quiet. Mara picked up the form and read it again. She could sign a sentence that was true in the narrowest way and still move the record in a direction Sloane did not expect. She drew a line through one clause, the one that admitted malicious intent, and rewrote it in plain postal language. "I confirm restricted handling was applied under emergency order." Mara read aloud. "I confirm manual intervention occurred during reconciliation. I accept administrative sanction." Sloane stared at the edits. "That is not a confession," he said. "It is a closure," Mara replied. "It gives you paper. It gives me one shift to fix what you broke." Kessler watched Sloane for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Not approval, but acceptance that paperwork sometimes mattered more than pride. Sloane slid a small token across the desk. "Limited privileges," he said. "One shift, one task. If you deviate, you return to the bay and Hollis becomes a formal charge." Mara took the token. It felt light, and that lightness felt like a trap. She signed the edited form and pressed her thumb to the pad. The office printer hummed, producing a copy with a fresh stamp. Sloane smiled as if the stamp had won. Mara did not smile back. She had just bought time. The maintenance shift arrived with a smell of hot metal and stressed coolant. Palisade Relay Station had been running hard since civilian suspension, pushing bureau packets and security audits through systems designed for routine life. Now the systems complained. An alert panel in the night window room flashed amber. Thermal loop pressure rising. Array cooling degraded. The station fans shifted into a harsher tone, pushing air harder through narrow ducts. A technician in coveralls spoke to Kessler in clipped words. "If we do not drop load, we lose the array," she said. Kessler glanced at the room cameras and the audit console. "Minimal mode," he ordered. "Keep the machine alive." The window transmit array throttled down. Lights dimmed. Non-essential recording processes suspended. The station did not become blind, but it blinked. For Mara, that blink was the only kind of opening that made sense. She sat at a terminal under Kessler's direct line of sight. Her limited token had an expiry clock that ticked down in the corner. The interface granted her a narrow set of actions: reconcile receipts, compare stamps, and generate a report. Sloane stood behind the glass partition, watching like a supervisor who wanted to see his reflection in the system. "Begin," Sloane said through the intercom. "Clean the anomalies." Mara opened the chain receipt ledger reconciliation tool. The screen populated with lines that did not match expected flow. Capsules that had entered intake twice. Packets that carried morale integrity bureau tags without proper postal handoff. Files stamped with time seal patterns that did not match any physical stamp schedule. The ledger was a story written by too many hands. Mara selected an anomaly cluster and ran a required process called provenance trace. It was a dull function used for audits. It crawled backward from dispatch confirmation to intake, listing every authority override along the way. To Sloane, it would look like routine. To Mara, it was a map of abuse. The trace output scrolled with quiet precision. Frontier Security Command override at the signal quarantine gate. Morale Integrity Bureau classification injected into header. Buffer vault tray reassignment without clerk sign-off. A ghost stamp event tied to an admin account not listed on the Interline Postal Service roster. Mara saved the trace into the report spool, then opened a second trace and a third. She did not pick random ones. She picked the ones that formed a pattern. Restricted traffic used as bait. Anomalies clustered around specific recipients. And holds that triggered interviews. Kessler watched her hands. "You are working fast," he said. "I have done audits before," Mara replied. The cooling alarms flared again. The station dimmed a little more. A few cameras along the corridor feed went static, then returned in lower resolution. The audit console dropped to minimal logging to protect storage heat. Sloane's voice came through the intercom. "Impatient. Do not overrun resources," he said. "Give me summary, not essays." Mara nodded as if agreeing, then did the opposite in a way he would not notice until it was too late. She printed. The office printer was not a luxury here. It was a safety feature. When systems overheated, paper was the fallback for chain custody. Minimal mode had enabled the print spool because it required less computation than full archival. Thin sheets slid out, each with a header, a stamp time, and a list of override events. Mara fed each sheet under the time seal stamp mounted beside the terminal. The physical imprint landed with a small, final sound. Now the record existed in two forms: on a stressed machine and on paper that could be carried. Kessler frowned. "Printing is not in your task," he said. "It is part of reconciliation chain custody." Mara replied. "If the array fails, paper preserves audit continuity." Kessler hesitated. He knew procedure. He also knew procedure could be weaponized. Mara kept printing, steady and calm, until she had a stack thick enough to matter. Then she built a small outbound packet, the kind used for maintenance summaries, and attached a compressed proof set. Not the whole story, just enough. A handful of traces that showed bureau injection and command overrides in a repeating pattern. She addressed it to the Relay Workers Guild archive node, an off-station repository that would accept a packet whenever the next tiny window opened. It did not need a full window. It needed a breath. Mara submitted the packet to the outbound queue, then watched the system assign a chain receipt number. Manual intervention appeared again. Sloane's voice sharpened. What did you just send? A reconciliation report, Mara said, to the Guild archive, for redundancy. That is not authorized, Sloane snapped. Kessler stepped closer, eyes on the screen. Open the packet header, he ordered. Mara did not resist. Resistance would turn this into a scene. She opened the header and let him see the destination. Kessler's face tightened. You are spreading internal audits. You are hiding internal audits. Mara replied. That is why people are dying in silence. The room temperature rose another degree. The cooling alarms screamed in a steady tone. Less a warning now and more a fact. Sloane's face appeared behind the glass partition. Pale with anger. Shut her down, he said to Kessler. Now. Kessler's jaw worked. He reached for his comm. Then paused as a new alert flashed on the main panel. Transmit micro window possible. Seconds only. The station had a brief dip in corridor noise. Just enough to push a tiny packet through if someone acted immediately. The array hummed, struggling, like a lung taking a shallow breath. Mara's outbound report sat queued, waiting for exactly this kind of moment. Kessler looked from the alert to Mara. He understood what she had done. If the packet left, the record would live outside Sloane's control. He grabbed Mara's token lanyard and yanked it free. The terminal grayed out at once. But the queue did not vanish. In minimal mode, queued packets stayed until flushed or purged by a separate command. Purge required higher privileges and time. Sloane shouted through the intercom. Purge the queue. Lock the entire archive ring. Now. Kessler turned toward his guards. Seal the corridor, he ordered. No movement. Full lockdown. Mara watched the micro window timer count down in silent seconds. She could not touch the terminal. She could only listen to the array hum and wonder if queued truth could outrun authority. The printer sat beside her with a warm stack of stamped pages. Paper evidence. Heavy evidence. Evidence that could be carried by a clerk or hidden in a food crate. Mara slid the stack into her jacket and stood as the guards moved in. The station lights dimmed again. Somewhere beyond the glass, Sloane was turning paperwork into a weapon, trying to close the gap before the truth slipped through. Kessler's hand tightened on Mara's arm. You just forced a lockdown, he said. Mara met his eyes. You were going to lock it anyway, she replied. I just made sure the record survives the lock. The door to the corridor sealed with a hard click this time. Not soft. The station was closing its throat. And somewhere in the system, a small packet waited for a breath of space. The lockdown order hit Palisade Relay Station like a cold hand. Doors sealed. Corridor lights dimmed. The archive ring bulletin boards switched to a single message that did not bother to sound polite. Restricted movement. Remain in place. Await instruction. Mara Keene stood in the quarantine gallery with her wrists restrained and a warm stack of stamped pages pressed against her side under her jacket. The paper edges dug into her ribs, reminding her the record still existed. Major Brant Kessler held her by the arm. Firm, not cruel. He treated her like a hazard, not a villain. Dr. Corvin Sloane walked beside them, calm enough to feel unreal. His voice carried over the hum of the window transmit arrays struggling to stay cool. You forced a station-wide response, Sloane said. You endangered stability. Mara kept her breathing even. You endangered it first, she replied. You just did it with forms. They reached the main corridor where the public boards faced the weighing crowd. People stood in clusters now, not in a line, because there was nothing to line up for. Their capsules were still in their hands. The station had taught them to hold their words close. A child looked up at Mara and then at the cuffs, eyes wide, as if trying to decide whether truth was allowed to be small. Sloane stepped toward the crowd and spoke like a man delivering an official notice. Interline Postal Service remains operational under emergency order, he said. Traffic is prioritized for war support and safety. Cooperation is required. No one cheered. No one booed. They simply watched, hungry for a sentence that did not taste like metal. Mara saw the man from earlier. The one who had asked for one confirmation about his wife on Kestrel front. He stood with his 2 children, shoulders tight, jaw clenched as if he was holding his anger like breath. Mara turned toward Sloane. "You can keep saying stability," she said, "but your silence is killing them." Sloane's gaze sharpened. "Silence prevents panic," he said. "Silence creates it," Mara replied, "because it forces people to imagine." Kessler tightened his grip slightly, a warning to keep it contained. Mara nodded once, then spoke to Kessler, not to plead, but to force him into the same public space as the consequences. "Major," she said, "you run enforcement. Tell them what happens if nobody trusts the postal counter." Kessler looked at her, then at the crowd. For a moment, he hesitated. He was trained to control crowds, not to educate them. Sloane cut in. "He does not have to answer you." Mara kept her voice steady. "He does not have to answer me," she said. "He has to answer the station." The crowd leaned in by inches, as if the air itself had shifted. Kessler's eyes moved over faces, over capsules clutched like talismans, over the bulletin boards that repeated the same cold line. When he spoke, his tone stayed measured. "If people stop trusting relay confirmations," Kessler said, "then orders will not move. Supply schedules will not move. Evacuation notices will not move. You will not know what to follow." He stopped there, as if saying more would cross an invisible line. Mara felt the corridor settle into a tense quiet. This was the moment she had been building toward. Not a riot, a choice. She turned her head toward the nearest public console, a slim terminal used for queue status checks. It was locked for civilians, but the display panel still refreshed from internal feeds. In emergency mode, it could show a simplified log for public reassurance. Sloane had kept that feature because it made the station look transparent while hiding details. He had not considered what would happen if the feature was pointed at the right slice of the record. Mara looked at Kessler. "I need 1 minute," she said. Kessler's mouth tightened. "You do not have access." "I do not need full access," Mara replied. "I need the public screen. And I need you to authorize one view. If you do not, then you are choosing silence on purpose." Sloane stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "Do not play courtroom," he said. "You are not a judge. You are a clerk who violated an order." Mara met his eyes. "Exactly," she said. "I am a clerk. That means I know what the record looks like when it is honest." She shifted her shoulders slightly, letting the stamped pages press harder under her jacket. She was reminding herself she was not empty. "Major," she said again, "authorize a public view of removal counts. Not content, just counts and timestamps. Let them see what has been deleted and when." Kessler hesitated. Sloane did not. "No," Sloane said, "that view is not for public use during unrest." Mara did not raise her voice. She raised the stakes. "Then I will tell them you are deleting messages without even counting them," she said, "and they will assume the worst. You cannot arrest an assumption." The crowd shifted, subtle but visible. A man took 1 step forward, then froze when a guard glanced at him. His hands tightened around a capsule, white-knuckled. Kessler's eyes flicked to his guards, then to the crowd again. He had seen stations tip before. He knew the first tipping point was not violence. It was disbelief. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small authority token. The kind used for temporary console access. He pressed it to the public terminal. The screen flashed and requested a view selection. Sloane's face hardened. "Major, do not." Kessler did not look at him. "I will not lose the corridor over a screen," he said. Mara kept her hands still, cuffed, while Kessler navigated the menu. It was simple language for public reassurance. Removal activity summary. Last 7 days. By authority tag. The screen refreshed. A list appeared with timestamp lines and removal counts. It did not show the content of any deleted voice letter. It only showed that deletions had surged. And it showed which tag had signed them. Morale Integrity Bureau. Frontier Security Command Override. The crowd stared. People did not need technical explanation. They needed to see the shape of what was happening. A woman whispered a name under her breath. Not because the screen showed it, but because the screen confirmed her fear had a reason. Mara heard the man with 2 children speak. Voice rough. So you did erase, he said. You did, and you told us to wait. Sloane stepped forward quickly, trying to recapture the narrative. Counts do not mean wrongdoing, he said. Counts mean protection. Mara turned toward him. Protection from what? She asked. From grief? From truth? Those are not threats. Those are what keep people human. The corridor held its breath. This was the collective choice. Not whether to fight, but whether to keep believing the station's calm words. A woman near the front lifted her capsule. If you delete my husband's voice, she said, you do not only delete him. You delete me. No one shouted. No one moved toward guards. They just stood with their capsules. And the stillness was stronger than noise. Kessler looked at the board. Then at Sloane. We cannot keep this locked forever, he said. Sloane's eyes narrowed. We must, he said, or we lose the war. Mara spoke quietly, and that quiet carried farther than any speech. If you lose trust, she said, you lose the station anyway. They did not release her that day. They moved Mara from the quarantine gallery to a deeper holding room with thicker doors and fewer cameras. It was not an execution chamber. It was worse. It was a place built for forgetting. Her cuffs were removed, but her token privileges did not return. A guard sat outside with a tablet, scrolling through feeds. The hum of the array came and went as the station tried to keep itself cool. Nia Vance appeared again at the slot with a water pouch and a small folded sheet of thermal paper. You made them look, Nia said. I made them see, Mara replied. Nia slid the thermal strip through. Mara unfolded it with careful fingers. It was not a bureau form. It was a packet acknowledgement. Recipient confirmation. Opened. Reply attached. Mara's chest tightened. A reply? Nia nodded once. It came through a micro window. Minimal content, but it is real. Mara held the strip as if it could crumble. From Elias? The tag matches, Nia said, and it passed integrity check. Mara read the attached text line. It was short, plain, and painfully ordinary. Mara, heard you, still here, keep the station honest, love, Elias. That was all. No poetry, no promises, no heroic vow, just a confirmation that a person still existed on the other side of distance and interference. Mara let out a breath that felt like she had been holding it for weeks. Her eyes burned, but she did not cry loudly. Loudness would give the guard a reason to interrupt. Nia watched her for a moment, then spoke softly. They will not reward you, she said. Sloane wants you removed from the record. Mara nodded. I do not need reward, she said. I needed that one line to exist. Some people out there needed it too, Nia replied. Mara folded the thermal strip and pressed it to her palm. It left a faint warmth, like a small engine running. Outside, she heard voices in the corridor. Not shouting, talking. People were talking again. When people talked, they were not only imagining. They were sharing what they saw. That alone changed the station. Days later, the Interline Postal Service counter reopened in a limited form. Civilian traffic did not return fully. The war still consumed bandwidth and bodies. But the bulletin board changed. Removal activity summary now refreshed in public view by default. The station did not list content. It listed counts, times, and tags. It gave people a way to measure truth by numbers that could not be smoothed by speeches. Sloane fought it. He called it destabilizing. He argued that the war required obedience. Kessler did not celebrate, but he did not shut it down. He had seen the corridor hold without violence when it was given a piece of truth. He had learned something enforcement rarely learned in training. A station could endure fear. It could not endure feeling lied to. Mara did not return to her old desk. Officially, she was under administrative sanction. Her career was marked. Her token stayed revoked. She became a person the system would rather not name. But she was not erased. Not fully. Nia and others made sure of that. One evening, a young postal trainee named Juno Paredes came to the holding room with a paper cup of station coffee and a blank chain receipt form. I am not supposed to speak to you, Juno said. Mara looked up. Then do not, she replied. Juno swallowed. I need to know something. She said, "When they tell me to delete, how do I decide?" Mara did not give a lecture. She did not talk about ideology. She held up the folded thermal strip from Elias. Then the stamped pages she had hidden and later surrendered into the guild archive. "This is how," Mara said, "ask what people actually need to keep living through a day." Juno glanced at the paper. Then at Mara. "Not slogans," she said. "Not slogans," Mara agreed. "One honest line can keep a person standing." Juno nodded slowly. She did not look like a revolutionary. She looked like a worker learning the real job. When Juno left, Mara sat alone and listened to the station. The hum of the array sounded steadier now, less like a struggling lung and more like a tool doing its work. She imagined Elias somewhere on Kestrel front, hearing her voice letter tucked into a maintenance header, smiling once in a quiet corner, then going back to his shift. Love did not need ceremony in war. It needed delivery. On the counter outside, a time seal stamp pressed into paper with a small, final sound, a receipt printed. A clerk tore it free and handed it to a waiting hand. The station did not become good. It became a little more honest. And in a war where distance and delay were weapons, that was a victory you could carry in your pocket. There are victories you do not measure in territory. You measure them in whether a sentence still reaches the person who needs it. In the quiet after the shift change, a single receipt lay on the counter, ink still fresh, proving that one message had been delivered to the right human. The stamp came down one last time. A small, ordinary sound in a station that had learned what truth cost. Mara did not get her desk back, and she did not get her name cleared. But the postal counter did not go silent again. People still lined up with capsules warm from their palms, still waiting for a window that might last only seconds. Yet now they could see the record of what was kept and what was taken. In the end, the war did not change because of a speech or a weapon. It changed because one message reached the right person, and a community remembered that a single honest line can hold a life together. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who enjoys calm science fiction, and subscribe to the channel, because your support helps more stories like this reach the people who need them most.